Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation for the day is as follows. Gauri Mahalla Panjava, Sadhsang Taki Sarni Parahu, Man Tane Apna Aage Tarahu, Amrit Naam Pivo Mere Pai, Simar Simar Sab Tabat Bujhai Rahao, Taj Abhiman Janam Maran Nivaro, हर के दास के चरण नमस्कारो, सास सास प्रभ मने संभाले, सो तन संचो जो चाले नाले, तिसह प्रापत जिस मस्तक भाग, कहो नानक ताकी चरनी लाग। तिसह प्रापत जिस मस्तक भाग, कहो नानक ताकी चरनी लाग। In this passage, one can discern the process of Sikhi being laid out by Guru Arjan. And the first step is to prepare oneself to receive instruction. It is to be receptive. That is why he says in the opening verse, Sadhsang taki Sarni Parahu. I placed myself under the tutelage of the enlightened being, the Sadh. Now we can consider Sadhsang as a congregation as well of seekers in the mystical presence of the Guru. So seeking that space, seeking that association is the first step. Be receptive, which means in practical terms, we have to set aside time to bring ourselves to such a congregation if one is to have an association. And so when we do that, we interrupt the rhythm of mundane life. And gradually, this process changes the way we will actually see the world. So be receptive, the Guru is saying. Sadhsang taki Sarni Parahu, find that association, and Mantan Apna Aage Taro. Place yourself, in other words, submit yourself, be receptive. And the end result in the Rahao, as we sense it, is it should lead you from setting aside time and study and listening to instruction to a situation where the state of one's mind is of constant remembrance. And he says in the Rahao, Amrit naam pivaho mere pai, simar simar sab tabat bujhai. This is actually a narration of his own experience, where he says, Amrit naam pivaho mere pai, simar simar sab tapat bujhai. Simar simar, through constant remembrance of the self, I have put out bujhai, the fire of passion, tapat. So restraint of the senses is the first practice after we have become receptive and have found the association. We have to rein in the senses. If you recall in the previous passages, we've been talking about holding back, stabilizing the mind, and that is done by pulling back on the senses. Simar simar sab tapat bujhai. Tapat, this is the fire of passion. This is what keeps the mind bubbling all the time. So the Guru is saying, through remembrance of the self, which is the instruction that is received from the Guru, I have put out the fire of passion. And then he makes the affirmation, my brethren, he says, Mere Pai, I have drunk, Piva Amrit, the life-giving elixir of self-knowledge. Amrit Naam, Piva Ho Mere Pai. So that is the state that ultimately occurs. But in addition to remembrance, which is the end state, we want to be receptive, we want to discipline our senses and give up self-pride. This goes along with reining in the senses. Taj abhiman, he says, and jaram marana nivaro. By giving up self-pride and speaking in the first person, he says, I gave my life proper direction. So renouncing self-pride involves redirecting one's life. In other words, a reframing of one's priorities. Taj abhaman janam marana nivaro. Give it direction. Reframe your priorities. And har ke das ke charan namaskaro. Submit yourself to the servants of the Har Self. And the servants of the Har Self in this context is that association. It is that congregation of seekers that you must first find. And saas prabh mane samale so tan sancho jo chale nale. With every breath, remain mindful and conscious of that immutable wisdom that has come to abide in the heart. That is the wealth to be gathered, because it is that wealth of wisdom which will lead us to liberation, to freedom, to the goal state. And the Guru concludes by saying, Tisah prapat jis mastak bhag, kaho nanak taki charni lag. Seek the instruction of the enlightener, and only the destined receive self-knowledge. So when the Guru says often, Tisah prapat jis mastak bhag, when he uses the word bhag, bhag means one whose life is graced with richness, but it also is hinting at motivation. One who is full of motivation to find the Guru, to find the right association, to motivate and rein in one's senses. That individual is liable to find grace eventually. That is the process. On that thought, until the next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.